So I grew up in North Carolina. Originally, my family's from Richmond, Virginia. Went to public school in North Carolina, went to Chapel Hill. Majored in mathematics, but part of that was in business. I tell my students that I was essentially socialized to go into the business world. So I never thought of anything other than that. One interesting note, I didn't take one course in religious studies at UNC. When I graduated, I moved to New York City and was in commercial banking for a couple of years, and then found my way into consumer product marketing, and ended up being in New York for a total of 4 years, and then was moved by a company to Greensboro, North Carolina, where I basically did brand management, consumer product marketing. When I was 30, I had an interesting lunch with a friend who had just come back from Indonesia and had spent about 6 weeks there and met a lot of backpacking travelers, and she was talking about all of these people who were traveling around the world, a lot of Brits, a lot of Australians, New Zealanders. And after that lunch, I started thinking that that might be something I'd like to do. I don't know why, but it just sort of stuck in my head, and I couldn't get it out. So 3 months later, I essentially resigned from my position in the corporation, sold my house, sold my car, and went off on a trip around the world, starting in New Zealand, up through Australia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, West Asia, Africa, and ended up going to Israel and then Turkey, and that was the end of the trip. So it was a 13-month venture. Just became fascinated along the way with Asia, Asian culture, history, philosophy, religion. Probably read, over 100 books during that 13-month period. Just became really fascinated, and one of the things that struck me in that journey was how those people, it seemed to me, were experiencing the world in reality in a way that was different from me. I just felt they were seeing the world and experiencing it in a way different than I did, and I really wanted to understand that. So when I came back, I looked into going to graduate school. I thought, I just want to pursue this interest. I don't know where it's going to go. I could eventually go back to the business world. But I applied to go to Vanderbilt Divinity School and did what they call a Master's in Theological Studies, which is essentially a master's degree in a divinity school. So I wasn't headed toward ministry. But the good thing about Vanderbilt was that I could sort of do both a study of Judaism and Christianity, but they also allowed me to study Asian religions, Buddhism in particular. And so my interest was primarily in Asian traditions. After doing that, and I began studying Japanese midway through that 2 years. I studied Japanese for another year, ended up going to Japan to study Japanese intensively in a program that was designed specifically for graduate students, and ended up getting into Princeton University in their Department of Religion to get a PhD in East Asian religions. I was very fortunate, wonderful program at Princeton. And when I finished at Princeton, as you can imagine, there are not necessarily a lot of jobs for East Asian religion positions in the US, but there was a job at Wake Forest, which was sort of the ideal job for me. Perfect sort of mid-sized university, had resources for research and all of that, but small classes and close student-faculty relations and that kind of thing. So at any rate, I was fortunate enough to get that job, and I've been there ever since. I'm now a full professor in East Asian religions at Wake Forest University. So that pretty much brings me up to the present.